guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today's video is all about this sketchbook. So we're going to be reviewing it. It's a sketchbook I got from Thailand and I'm really pleased with it so far. So I'm going to get straight into what I thought about it. And if you do like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And yeah, let's get on with it.
So a little bit about the sketchbook. It's 180 GSM, which did slightly concern me because I do prefer thicker paper and I was used to a 300 GSM from my previous sketchbook, even though that was a scrapbook. So the paper that I was used to is a little bit thicker, and basically having thicker paper means that it can handle more water content on the page, which is perfect considering I like to use gouache and watercolour. So that was a slight concern of mine. However, while I was in the shop in Thailand, he did show me that it had been used for watercolour previously. He had a little sample one. These were only very thin washes of paint, so I picked it up anyway. It's £5, so that was just like a really good bargain in my opinion. It's not a brand that I can get in the UK, and I'm not going to try and say it because I cannot pronounce the name. But yeah, so I did look online. I can't seem to get that in the UK, and it seemed like honestly a decent price, and considering that it could withstand a little bit of watercolour and gouache at the very least, I thought it was a good one to have. And even if I didn't like it, it was only £5. Like, I really can't complain. Although I did pick up two because my partner made a good point of, if I do like this, I'm going to be very upset that I only got one. So yeah, so it is very slightly textured paper, and it does say on the front cover that it is designed for dry mediums and can also withstand small bits of watercolour and that, which I had seen in the shop. Now, for today's purpose of reviewing the sketchbook, I wanted to work on a side that, so on the previous video was the very first page, and then I did this one on the back of it, and the reason why I want to do that is because that's a good way to see how well the paper holds up. So obviously from the first page there was no bleed through, but today's one I was doing a lot more layers than what I had done on the first page, so this was going to be a good test to see whether it could still withstand and whether there was going to be any bleed through or any buckling of the paper. So for this I didn't bother filming the sketching part because we already know all sketchbooks should at least be able to hold pencil. That is the purpose of a sketchbook, and yeah, I didn't have any issues there. The texture is really nice, so it's able to give it quite a little bit of added, well, texture to the piece, but it works really well, and I prefer that over smoother paper anyway. But it's not too hard that it would wear down pens and that too quickly, so it's quite nice. Now, I did start off with several layers on the background, and I did this on purpose because I wanted to see how well this paper would do considering the amount of water that was going into that page. And honestly, pleasantly surprised. There wasn't any buckling. Well, there is some, but there's not a lot. Like, it's very, very minimal, about what I would get from my scrapbook once I'd painted on both sides, which was surprising given how much thinner this paper is. But honestly, it did really well. The paper absorbed water quite nicely. You don't have to wait too long for it to dry because it does absorb. Where it's a bit more textured, it doesn't pool on the page as much, which is quite nice. Which did originally make me a bit concerned that it would then bleed through to the other page because it was absorbing some of the water. But again, that was unfounded. This hasn't bled through at all. It's actually really resilient paper. I even went over quite a few times on the line between her face and the background because I was trying to make that quite darker so that she stood out a bit more, and even with that amount of going over, there was still no bleed through. This is actually better than the other sketchbook I got from Thailand, which is what I work in for my portraits, and that sketchbook was actually more expensive, but the paper doesn't hold up as well. You have to be careful with the amount of water that you're putting on, and I was kind of expecting the same thing from this, but actually this paper did really well. It didn't matter how many times I went over the page. I mean, that background, as you saw, I did 3 layers on that background, and then I went over it again. I've done several layers on the hair here, several layers in the face, especially where there's shadowing, so I would expect at least a few points to have bled through to the other side like what I get with my other sketchbook, but honestly, no, I haven't had any issues with that at all, and I was really happy. So as I said, the main reason why I worked on this side is to check whether it can handle paint on both sides of the paper without buckling over much and without bleed through, and both of those passed with flying colours. The colours themselves look really nice on this paper. The paper's not yellowed in any way, which is really good. Again, with previous sketchbooks that I've had, it's been a bit frustrating where the paper is more creamy coloured or more yellow, and so the colours themselves can be a bit warped because of it, whereas this is a nice soft white, so it actually just enhances all the colours, which I really like. And again, because of the texture, it's easier for me to work on than the smooth paper that I had previously with my other large sketchbook. So overall, I'm genuinely really pleased with this. It worked really well. I found it really easy paper to work on and to do loads of detailing. And yeah, honestly, I could sing about this paper all day. It is really good. It's frustrating that I can't get hold of it in England, but at least I've got 2 of these A4 sketchbooks, so it should keep me going for a while because there's actually quite a lot of paper in there. I do like the fact that it's actually a ring binder, just because I find it easier to be able to do this and lay everything flat, whereas sometimes when you don't have a ring binder, the pages won't lay flat and you can break the binding when you are trying to put them flat, so that's a bit frustrating. So about this piece is kind of designed for Queen of Hearts. I'm debating whether to do a card suit, so of the kings, jacks, queens and jokers, just because me and my partner both love playing card games anyway, and it would be really fun to have a suit that I've designed. So it's something I'm playing around with, and I started off with the Queen of Hearts first, just to go with all those really lovely rich red tones. This is just an idea of it. It's probably something that will change quite a lot if I do stick with this, but we'll see how it goes. And even here, the paper's still held up really well with all my pens I like to use. Sometimes I find some papers don't hold up that well with fine liners, but again, this was absolutely fine, didn't have any problems. And even when I was layering on thick and medium, like my poster paint for the gold of the crown, that worked really nicely. So once I was done, I checked, and as you can see, no bleed through at all. Given the amount of layers that I put into that and the amount of dark colours that I did, it held up brilliantly well. I'm really impressed. Honestly, if you get a chance, I would recommend picking up one of these if you're ever in Thailand. But honestly, brilliant sketchbook and a brilliant price.